Well, hello, all of my algebra people. I hope you're doing great today. Sorry I can't be with you, but we're still going to do some math today. Darn. But here's what we got going on. So first off, we're looking at our absolute value functions. These are really just another kind of piecewise functions if we think about them. So today we're still going to look at some translations about how maybe a graph can be translated, vertically up and down, right, or horizontally left and right. You'll see in our two examples what we've got going on here. We still have f of x and g of x, right, so that's nothing new. We can graph these on Desmos, all right. If you are going to graph absolute value functions on Desmos, you need to use the keyboard to get the absolute value. And it looks like this on Desmos. So if you find this absolute value bar with an A in it, right, you click that, and then you can write whatever you need to inside your absolute value. Click it again, it will close the absolute value, and then if you've got something outside of that expression, plus a number, minus a number, you can add that in there. But let's take a look at what we've got here. It just wants us basically just to graph each function, state the domain and range. Okay, so we could use a table to graph all of these. I'm just going to assume that we can probably just, we can probably just use Desmos, right? That's going to be just fine. If we graph this one right here, x minus 1, right, it's going to look like that. It's a terrible line. And then it just says, hey, state the domain and range. And then the last part is what? Describe how the graph is related to that. Okay, so we did want to graph that one anyway. Well, let's do this. All right, so my green line, there is the absolute value of x. So that is, right, g of x equals the absolute value of x. And in red, we have, right, our f of x function, which really should go through there, okay? Looks good. I'll do a better job on the next one. State the domain and range. Domain x values. So left to right, how does our graph go? Well, again, doesn't stop anywhere, so all real numbers there. Range, up and down, y values. How low does it go? How tall or how high does it go? So our graph doesn't get any lower than this point right here. That's 0 on the y-axis, so I want all y values that are greater than 0. How is our graph? So we're figuring out, how is the red graph compared to the green graph? Well, it looks like it is translated 1 unit right. So I'll say 1 unit to the right. Okay, good enough. Let's figure out our next one. Again, I'm going to graph. We're comparing everything to g of x is the absolute value of x. And that is that line right there. Okay. So here I'm going to graph negative x plus 2, the absolute value of negative x plus 2. And that one looks like this. All right, so it goes that way and that way. Okay. So domain, still all real numbers. All right, our range, again, high to low, and those are all y values greater than 0. And how one was this translated? Again, pretty obvious to see, just 2 units. To the right, we're moving in the same direction there. All right, same thing on this last one. So let's figure out, again, here's our graph of g of x. Let's graph f of x. I'll graph that in whatever color this is. So what's this one going to do? All right, this is going to, here we go. look like this. All right. So what did that do to our graph? That shifted it down, or translated it down 4 units. So again, domain, all real numbers. Range, how low does it go? Well, it goes down this far. That's at -4. So again, y values greater than -4. And I apologize, kiddos. This should be greater than or equal to, just like the other ones are. Ooh, that was crazy. Sweet. Woo! Okay. There you go. Not sure why it's doing that, but that's pretty cool. So anyway, how did we translate this one? This one got translated 4 units down. All right. Again, the range on the other two, I apologize, are y is greater than or equal to 0. Okay, look, I'm not perfect. Okay, so I think we're good on this page. Let's zoom to the next page. Okay. Same kind of stuff we got going on here. So this one, we're going to graph these functions a little bit different this time. If you look at examples 1, 2, and 3, I don't have anything inside the absolute value expression. Now I've got something outside of it, right? And so what is that going to do? So again, we're still going to state domain and range, but then we're also going to, again, still describe how is the graph compared to our original function g of x. Make this straight like that. Okay. So again, g of x, right, hasn't changed. It's still the absolute value of x. So that still looks just like that. Okay. If we graph -3x, what does that look like? Well, it looks like this. All right. And again, these have I'm not drawing the arrows on there, kiddos, but they're there, right? I know those lines go on forever. So domain and range. All right. Domain, still not hard. All real numbers, or ARN, because I'm lazy. Range. So how low does it go? How high does it go? Well, our graph goes from, way down low, so maybe like -infinity, and then it doesn't get any higher than this point right here. So that's at 0 on the y-axis. So now I want y values that are less than or equal to 0. And how did we go from the green graph to the red one? Well, it had to be flipped kind of upside down, right? We have a special word for flipped. We call that a reflection. So we would say it is a reflection. In this case, it got flipped over this line here. Well, that's just our x-axis. So reflection over the x-axis. All right. Now, if we did that, that just turns it into, into this. Now I have to make it, kind of taller. We could think about it. When we do that, that's called a stretch. So this one, it gets vertically stretched. And we know what factor it gets stretched by. It gets stretched by a factor of 3. All right, that is not a coincidence. Whatever number we see right here, that's always the number that our graph will get stretched or shrunk by. Right? A stretch means it gets closer to the y-axis. If it is a shrink, it gets closer, or shrunk, it gets closer to the, you guessed it, x-axis. Okay? So again, here's our first graph. Let's go ahead and graph f of x, which is 0.25x. So that's going to look like this. Again, how am I getting these graphs? I am just, well, I'm awesome, but you should be using Desmos if you need to, right? So you could make an x and y table, pick a couple numbers, and you're going to be just fine, okay? But, let's use some technology. Let's be smart. Domain, all real numbers. All right, range, y values greater or equal to the number 0. All right, this one, it's not reflected, right? It's still in the same, half of the coordinate plane that the green graph is. This one just gets closer, right? It gets smushed. Some outside force has pushed it down. So we call this one, instead of a stretch, this one, we can say it's horizontally, you can say a shrink, right, by a factor of 1/4. Okay. Awesome. Onward we go. If at any time you want to give this last one a shot, feel free. Okay, again, here's our graph of the absolute value of x. And what does our new graph look like? Well, it looks like that. And it looks like that. So domain is still pretty boring, all real numbers. Right? Range, now I want y values that are less than or equal to 0. And we did two things to change from the, right, to go from the green. Again, if we reflect it across the x, all right, it looks like this. Then again, it's got to get closer to the x-axis. So the first thing we would say is a reflection, all right, across the x-axis. All right, that's thing number one. Thing number two is a shrink by a factor of 1/2. Right? And you don't have to say negative 1/2, right? Because the reflection takes care of that, right? The reflection says, yep, you went from just a what we'd think of as a positive to now a negative. So we don't have to say it was a shrink by a factor of negative 1/2. Okay, so I think we're good there. Let's go ahead and, so the next 2 pages, right, are going to be all you. The solutions to those will be online. All right, so I know I'm not there. I'm just there, well, I'm there in your earbuds, okay? So go ahead, right? Our homework for this weekend is literally just to finish up with the next 2 practice pages. So work through those problems. I think you guys should be good to go. Again, if something doesn't make sense, rewatch this video, or as well, you've got all of your videos that are online that you guys can take a quick look at too. So go to the next 2 pages, work on those. If you have questions or whatnot, ask somebody at your table. Ask online, do what you got to do, be resourceful. Okay? Hope you guys had fun today, and I will talk to you guys later. See ya.